Oh, oh baby, here we are. We're F it. We're doing it live. I thought about doing this, pre-recorded, but it's been a minute since I've been live, so I might have to shake off the rust here. I don't know. We might have a few misclicks. I'm not really sure what's going to happen, but this is the NFL mock draft. Happy NFL draft eve. We're doing 3 rounds. We're doing some trades. It might get a little cockamamie. I don't know. But there's all sorts of rumors flying around. I'm going to try to not pay attention to those. I know Peter Schrager came out with his NFL mock draft this morning. And I'm hearing stuff about the Bears. So without further ado, let's just get started. I don't really want to be here, for 3 hours. But we might have some people pop in. I don't know. I kind of did this last minute. But so I don't know about you, but I think the first 3 picks are pretty much set in stone. I think Cam Ward is going to be taken number 1 overall. I think Travis Hunter is going number 2 overall. And then I think Abdul Carter is going number 3 overall. So that leaves us with the New England Patriots, and there's all sorts of steam around. Oh, will somebody trade up for Genty? Are the Jaguars going to take Genty? I do think that this is interesting, but I think that the Patriots are likely just going to stick and pick. I think this is a lot of noise, to be honest with you, and I think Will Campbell's likely going to be their pick. At 4, they need offensive line help. It makes all the sense in the world. Now, I do think that there is some real hype behind the Jaguars taking Ashton Genty. I do. It would also make some sense for them to take wide receiver, if they like Tedero and McMillan. The latest rumors are that for sure that they're locked into offense. We'll see. But I do think that this is probably where either Genty or Tedero McMillan come off the board. And I think it's going to be Genty. I really do. So Genty comes off the board here. And now the Raiders, if they wanted Genty, they're probably thinking, oh man, I don't know. Or maybe that's a bunch of smoke screen. I don't know. The Raiders could use a wide receiver like Tedero McMillan. They could use a cornerback. They could use some offensive line help. And I honestly think that they would love Armand Membu. So I think I'm going to give them Membu. And now the Jets. So the Jets could use an offensive lineman. They could use a lot of things, to be honest with you. They could also use a pass catcher. But man, this feels like the perfect landing spot for one Tyler Warren. So that's the direction I'm going to go. I think giving Justin Fields as many weapons as he can possibly handle would be the direction I would go. Now I might go wide receiver over tight end. That's probably something I would do. But I feel like the Tyler Warren is just a Jets pick. Let me know what you think in the comments. We are now at the Panthers, pick number 8. And the more I think about it, I know Jalen Walker could be taken here, and a lot of people have him mocked there. But I was kind of looking into this and watching some shows and thinking about how the Panthers' their defensive line is set up. It just kind of feels like Mikael Williams would be a better fit for them. So I think Mikael Williams is going to be the pick. Jalen Walker, I understand, is slipping a little bit here. So that leaves the Saints and some people in the media and the big time think that this could possibly be a Shedeur Sanders landing spot here. I don't know about that. I honestly don't. I don't know what the Saints are doing, to be honest with you, because they're signing all these win now pieces like Brandon Cooks. And I don't think that they're, especially if Derek Carr is not going to play this year, which who knows? He is doing car reviews, which is, his last name's Carr. So this is interesting to me. I've seen Dane Brugler mock Tetero McMillan here. I think that that would be a wet blanket for us in fantasy football, although I suppose it's possible. Um, I don't know if Jalen Walker makes a ton of sense for them. I like I'm kind of stuck and my wheels are kind of turning here. I also think that this could be a trade out spot if the Saints, and I don't know, you'd have to convince Mickey Loomis to give up or not push the chips into the middle of the table every single year. But Mason Graham falling this far feels like a value for them. So I'm going to give them Mason Graham. And the Bears are just distraught because I feel like Mason Graham's pretty high up on their board. And now the Bears are kind of looking around and they're going, well, shoot. The top tackles off the board, maybe the top two tackles. Tyler Warren's off the board. Genty's off the board. There's a lot of steam around a team like the Broncos moving up. Maybe the Colts move up. I saw that in Schrager's mock draft. But I also think that there's a player on the board that I think they've been really quiet about, but I think is going to get drafted a lot higher than people think. And so I'm just going to have him stick and pick with Kelvin Banks, man. Kelvin Banks is really good. And that would immediately provide some competition at left tackle. I do think Kelvin Banks is a left tackle. So, again, there will be some trades, I assume, coming up. I don't know. I'm just kind of going through this exercise. You're seeing it play out live here. I didn't really prep, or I did prep. I mean, I've been looking at these prospects ever since November, mostly on the offensive side of the ball. But I'm just kind of going through this. I don't know what the right word is for it, but just you're seeing it play out the process here. So that leaves the 49ers, and I really think that they are probably going to. We'll see. Maybe he falls this far, maybe not. I know a lot of people have him high on their board. Walter Nolan's a name that's been picking up some steam lately, but I do think that they go to the trenches, and man, there's a lot of different options here for them. I think obviously Walter Nolan. I think Mike Green is an interesting name for them, but I don't know. I don't know if it's a perfect fit or not, but I think this is an interesting spot for Jalen Walker. So I'll just give him Jalen Walker. I don't know if it's perfect or not, but I will tell you what is perfect is Matthew Golden going to the Dallas Cowboys here at pick 12. I think that's either a Matthew Golden perfect spot or a Tetero McMillan perfect spot. I would take Tetero McMillan, but I'm kind of doing this how I think other teams would do it. I think it'd be a nice fit with CeeDee Lamb. Moving on down to the Miami Dolphins. And again, this could be a trade down. Who knows? But the Miami Dolphins, think about their roster. They definitely could use offensive line. I think trenches are where we look. Offensive line, defensive line. It's all. I think that's where they look. And I think a name out there that I've seen a lot of people mock really late, but I think he's the next best offensive tackle on the board, is Josh Simmons. I also think Tyler Booker could be in play here. I think people are a lot higher on, or the league is a lot higher on Josh Connerly than many of us think. So unless there's somebody that I'm just forgetting here, which is possible, all right, It's very possible. But I mean, Tyler Booker is interesting. I do think Tyler Booker is going to go in the first round. Um, I think that, man, yeah, I think Josh Simmons is going to be the pick. Let me know what you think of that in the comments. That might be a little bit early, but I think it's a good fit for them. I know he's coming off of an injury too. And let me just double check. Mikael Williams, Jalen Walker. All right. Make sure that I'm not missing anybody here. That was kind of one of my. Okay, I guess Shamar Stewart's still out there. Shamar Stewart's interesting. He really is. I mean, that's a classic traits versus production argument. Now let's go with the Colts. I think this is easy. I think they want Colston Loveland at tight end. I also think the Falcons pick is easy. I think they're really into Mike Green, the edge rusher, so I'm going to give them Mike Green. And the Cardinals, I also think is relatively easy. I think they need a cornerback. Will Johnson's here. Jahdae Barron, take your pick. I'm going to give them Will Johnson. So that leaves us with the Bengals. And the Bengals need defense in the worst way. They fired their defensive coordinator. And I do think that this would be a team that, I mean, would be thrilled with Walter Nolan, would be thrilled with Shamar Stewart. But I'm going to give him Shamar Stewart. And because I do think he's going in the first round. I think some team is going to be just blown away with the traits. And the Bengals feel like a really good fit. And it gives them some leverage in the Trey Hendrickson weirdness that's going on. So now we are up with the Seattle Seahawks at pick 18. Notice Tetairoa McMillan is still on the board. I think that this is a prime spot for another offensive lineman to come off the board. I think Gray Zabel's in play. Again, Connerly could be in play. You know, they need some help there for sure. But I think the interior of the offensive line is where we're going to look. And I think this is where Tyler Booker comes off the board. So Tyler Booker, they get a real ass kicker on the interior of their offensive line. And now I know this is going to be chalky, but Jahad Campbell, the Buccaneers, if he falls this far, I think they take him. And now with the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, I tell you this, when you look at their like depth chart, I think wide receiver could be a real option for them. And you think about Tetairoa McMillan and the fit that he could possibly have in this offense. I think it's real. I think that this could happen, and it's my mock draft. God damn it! So Tetairoa McMillan to the Broncos with Sean Payton. Let's make it happen. Let's do it. And now we've gone 21 picks and no trades. The trades might be coming. Just to let you know. So here we are with the Steelers. And I think this has to be a quarterback pick. I think either Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, all potentially in play here. It's just kind of who do the Steelers like. And I'm torn between Shedeur Sanders and Jackson Dart here. And just to be spicy, because he's my quarterback too, I'm going to give him Jackson Dart. I think Jackson Dart, out of all these quarterbacks, has the most upside from just like, can you win me games at the NFL level? So Jackson Dart is going to be the pick. And now I think this is relatively easy with the Chargers. It's Jim Harbaugh. It's Kenneth Grant. Get some defensive line help. And now the Packers, these stupid Packers, I think get just a really good player here. They're looking at a number of different players. But if Jade Barron falls this far to them, I think that they would sprint to the podium. And similarly to the Vikings, I think the Vikings would think about trading out. But if Walter Nolan falls to them, I mean, they could use interior defensive line, as my voice cracks. I don't know why that's happening. I don't know if I'm going through puberty again. I'm not sure. But this is my voice has been cracking a lot. If there's a voice specialist out there that can help me with as it happens again, they can help me with this. I would much appreciate it. I feel like I'm reverting, like I feel like I'm Benjamin buttoning. I'm aging in reverse or whatever. Okay. Now here we are with the Texans. And I think that offensive tackle is for sure in play. And I think, man, I think that this is just too obvious. I think either Connerly or Gray Zabel, take your pick. I'm going to give him Gray Zabel. And here we are with the 26th pick. And it's been so boring to this part with to this point with no trades. And I don't think that changes here. Now the Rams, you think about what they could use. They're probably pretty bummed that they missed out maybe on one of the tight ends. They were famously trying to trade up for Brock Bowers last year. But I think that there's a cornerback on the board that's kind of a wild card to go in the first round. And you let me know what you think of this. I've seen very prominent people take this guy very high, and that's Maxwell Harrison. So he's going to be my pick for the Rams. And now we're entering into the territory where I think one of these teams is going to come up potentially for Shedeur Sanders. But I don't know if it's going to happen right now, because what the Ravens are going to do is what the Ravens always do. And they're just going to sit here and take Malachi Starks, the best player left on the board according to PFF, according to them. So now we have the Detroit Lions. And the Detroit Lions, man, I think last year kind of showed them that how about this? When you think you have enough in the trenches, you don't. I mean, you kind of always need depth there because you never know what's going to happen. And man, if I think edge is probably where they're looking, edge or maybe interior defensive line, and Derek Harmon from Oregon, I think could be a really good fit for them. So I'm gonna give them the trenches and maybe some players that should have gone a little bit earlier than they did. So moving on down to the Washington Commanders. And from a fantasy perspective, long term, not short term, because they have Debo and they have Terry McLaurin there right now, but Emeka Egbuka, one of the wide receivers, would be really fun here. I don't think that's the direction that we're going to go. I mean, I would just keep my pedal to the metal if I were the Commanders and probably just take the best player available. And, they could use a corner. They could use edge. They could use, like I said, a wide receiver. But honestly, I think they'd be thrilled to make this pick. And the more I'm thinking about it, and I know he's further down on PFF's list. I know I haven't taken him yet, so I know I'm not crazy scrolling. But Nick Emanori, just a beast of a safety. I don't know why PFF has him ranked so low, but I think that is the best player talent-wise on the board. So might not be the top position of need, but man, that would be fun. and the Buffalo Bills are now. And I think that this is where we get our first trade. All right. So we're going to trade with the New York Football Giants. And the New York Football Giants are going to give up pick. We'll just make this like 50-50 in the. Okay, so that's not going to be accepted. Because I don't know. Like, people are all over the place with these godforsaken trades, right? So it's coming at me. All right. I'll try to make it just like 50-50 if I can. Or if I can't, whatever. So how about pick 99, which would be a third rounder, a compensatory pick, and a fifth rounder to move up 4 spots. And it's going to be worth it for the Giants because they're going to be taking Shedeur Sanders here. So Shedeur Sanders to the Giants at the end of the first round. Come on down. And now the Chiefs, as my dogs go barking. It's live is fun. So I think that they would be sprinting to the podium to take Josh Connerly. I think in the real NFL draft, man, Josh Connerly probably should have went higher in this one, but let me know what you think. And now the Eagles are on the clock. We're almost done with round 1. If you're liking this, like it. If you, if you want to subscribe. That would be great. As the Eagles sit here, I don't know how much smoke there is around the fact that A.J. Brown is potentially going to get traded. I don't know. I tend not to believe these things until they happen. But if there's any truth to that, I mean, it would be really fun to just give him Luther Burden here. I don't know how realistic that would be, but I mean, Luther Burden, that would be a lot of fun. I don't think that's the direction that they go. If you think about, they need some help along the defensive line. They're probably salivating. I mean, they might trade up if Nick Emanori falls as far as he did in this one. They could trade up. I mean, just kind of looking at who's on the board. I mean, I think Trey Amos would be in play. I do think James Pierce would be in play for them. In fact, I think that is the pick. I think James Pierce is the pick here. They can take some chances on a guy. I mean, we saw him do it with when they traded up to pick 9. I can't think of the guy's name right now, but it's Jalen Carter. So I think that they take a guy who they believe should have gone a lot higher in the draft in James Pierce. And now here we are. Round 2. We're going at a pretty good pace, man. I didn't know if we would go this fast, but we're through the round 1. Round 2. The Cleveland Browns are on the clock. And the Cleveland Browns, I think, are interested in a quarterback. And I think the Cleveland Browns are going to take Jalen Milroe. So if you look at who they've taken, or the Browns, let's go back to the Browns. Travis Hunter, Jalen Milroe. They do miss out on, it would be fun to give them Shedeur and just have Shedeur and Travis Hunter. In fact, I think that's probably who they would be competing with to trade up, and that's why New York traded up to get Shedeur Sanders. And so now Buffalo is going to make their first pick. The Buffalo Bills. So the Buffalo Bills, they could use, what could the Buffalo Bills use? They could use corner, use defensive line, edge. I mean, wide receiver might be fun. I mean, Luther Burden might be fun. Emeka Egbuka might be fun. But I don't know if that's the direction that they go. Man. Let's just do it. I think Trey Amos would be a good pick here for them. So Trey Amos. And now here we go. Here we go. Tennessee's on the clock. Cam Ward, they need a weapon for him. Let's give him Emeka Egbuka. Let's do that. And now the Jaguars are on the clock. They take Genty, and they're going to keep giving Liam Cohen some weapons. Okay, they're going to keep giving Trevor Lawrence some weapons. Luther Burden, come on down. So the Raiders take Membu, and now they're going to get their running back, Omarion Hampton. So this is making us very happy for fantasy football. And I think it makes sense. And you let me know what you think in the comments. I think all these teams would be absolutely thrilled if they get those three players, bam, bam, bam. And now the Patriots, Will Campbell was their pick. I think they're a little bummed they missed out on the wide receivers, although I do think Jaden Higgins would be in play for them. I think that would make a lot of sense. I don't know if they go running back. I mean, they just signed Ramondre Stevenson, so I don't know if that makes a ton of sense for them. Uh, and I don't know. The Patriots, and I think that they're going to be a little off the beaten path, but I think honestly, and I know they spent a lot of money on edge, but if Donovan Izaraku is here, I think that they'd just be thrilled to take him. And now this leaves my Chicago Bears, and I think that they would absolutely be enamored with a couple different positions. Um, I think that Scorton, like if you like, he's so big, and I think he'd be a good fit for a Dennis Allen defense. So he's an option. I do think Trevion Henderson would be in play here for them, or Caleb Johnson, or a running back that fits the Ben Johnson mold. I do think that could be the potential here to go. The Saints, the Saints could, I mean, it would probably make some sense for them to take running back first, honestly, because the Saints took Mason Graham with the ninth overall pick. So I do think that I'm going to give the Bears Trevion Henderson, and the run of good fantasy players or fantasy fits continues. Okay, so the New Orleans Saints, the weirdest team maybe out there. Um, I don't know, man. This is a tough one. I suppose they could go wide receiver. I honestly, if I were the Saints, I'd be blowing it up, to be honest with you, and I would be looking to trade back as much as possible. But the problem is I don't really see a player on the board here that a team would just want to trade up for. If you look at the Saints and their needs, they're plentiful, so they could really go in any direction here. I mean, I I know Dane Brugler had him taking Tyler Shuck in his mock draft. Oh man. And if there's any concern about Derek Carr, I mean, I guess they could go in that direction. But you start to think about who's on the board. And, Benjamin Morrison could be in play. Jade Higgins could be in play. Siobhan Ravel from East Carolina is another good corner. I think the defensive tackle from Toledo, Darius Alexander, could be in play. But, I'm just gonna, yeah, this is a tough one. I think them signing Brandon Cook, I think that they're stubborn enough to think that they can win now. So what a win now piece for them, I think, would be Darius Alexander. Let me just double check. Yeah, that's a need for them. Or I suppose they could go offensive line. They could do that, and Donovan Jackson sitting there. Why don't we do that? Donovan Jackson, offensive line. And now the Bears, I think, are just thrilled to get Nick Scorton. So the Bears, I think, have a nice haul here with Banks, Trevion Henderson, and Nick Scorton. So come on down. And now the Jets. So the Jets go offense with their first pick. And they could be looking at Tyler Shuck, I suppose, sitting behind Justin Fields for a year. They could be looking at wide receiver. Jaden Higgins makes a ton of sense for them. They could also be looking offensive line, although that's kind of dried up. If you look at the offensive linemen still on the board, Tate Radlich is interesting. Arante Ursary, that actually would be a pretty decent fit. But I do think that the pick here would be Jaden Higgins, and I think that that's a good fit. So they get a wide receiver and a tight end for Justin Fields. Maybe it's not the style of Glenn there, the coach, but this is my mock draft. What's he gonna do about it? Okay, San Francisco, come on down to the podium. They went on with Jalen Walker, and I think that they could use Aaron Banks, that guard they lost. They could use an Aaron Banks replacement, and Tate Ratledge would be that for them. So Tate Ratledge to the 49ers. And now we have the Cowboys. And the Cowboys, as we all know, went Matthew Golden. And I think Jerry Jones is at the I don't care anymore part of his tenure as the owner and general manager of the Dallas Cowboys. And because he is there and just wants to probably have some fun, Caleb Johnson. There we go. How about Caleb Johnson to the Cowboys? I love it. Now we have the Colts. So they go tight end. They fill their biggest need, or one of their biggest needs, and I think that was a good pick. Now that they have their tight end, they are probably, offensive line. They could use a linebacker, and gosh, man, I just because I said linebacker, I don't think that there's more of an Indianapolis Colt out there than Carson Schwessinger. So he's going to be my pick here for the Colts. And now the Falcons, who do not have a third-round pick, I don't believe. Yes, they do not, because it would be showing up here. So they went Mike Green with their first pick. They could use a center. Drew Dahlman's not there anymore, as my computer's freezing up, so bear with me here. They could use, their defense, I think, could be a really, like a linebacker, wide receiver could be an interesting choice for them. And we have Alec Ayumanor on the board here as my computer is freezing up. Hopefully this doesn't affect the live stream too much, but we'll just kind of talk through this. Again, apologies. This is what happens sometimes when you go live. Is the computer doing all right down there? It's not on fire? Nope. All right, we're back, I think. Sorry about that. So again, they could go in a lot of different directions here. I also think that they might look to trade down and maybe get back a third-round pick. But I think if Darius Alexander's here, I think that they keep bolstering that defensive line. And he's a really good player. And I don't know if he would fall this far, to be honest with you. But if he did, I think that they would be very happy with that. So now we have the Arizona Cardinals. They went cornerback with their first round selection. They could draft a wide receiver, as much as that would pain me. They could also go linebacker or edge, defensive line. There's a lot of different directions that they could go. And, also, do they believe in Trey Benson long term? I think that they do. I don't think that they would take a running back. Just kind of scrolling to see who's here. Um, Alfred Collins would be a nice pick for them. Maybe Kyle Kennard. There's some tackles that I like, but I don't know if that makes a ton of sense for them. Demetrius Knight is also there. That would be nice. But I do think that I think they're going to stick in the trenches here. And there's a defensive tackle that I'm seeing. Yeah, I think I have to give him Omar Norman Lott. I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins went offensive tackle Josh Simmons. They shocked the world by taking an offensive lineman. Now, now I do think that they look to the other side of the ball, and I think the interior of the defensive line needs some help. And I think that there's a player on the board that they would love if they could get him. That's Tyleik Williams from Ohio State. Bengals. Bengals. Shamar Stewart was their first pick. Now, they have a lot of needs on defense. So they could go back to defense. They could use a linebacker, they could use offensive line. I mean, but I think that there is a player here that I think that they would be really, really happy with, and that's Kevin Winston Jr. So the Bengals get Kevin Winston Jr. and Shamar Stewart. I think that's a really good haul for them. And now the Seahawks, who took Tyler Booker with their first round pick, they could, man, they could continue to add to the offensive line because there's offensive linemen that I think like Ursary I really like. Um, Marcus Bowe uh, from Purdue is really interesting, but I think that there are. I think Brandon Swinson, if he falls this far, makes a lot of sense for them. So I think that that's going to be my pick. And now the Broncos. The Broncos, as we all remember, took Tetairoa McMillan with their first pick. And I do think that Sean Payton is going to be looking for a running back in the mold that he likes, which is, a pass catcher, shifty. I know that Quinshon Judkins is on the board still, and maybe that's unrealistic. I don't know. But gosh, Dylan Sampson makes some sense, but Devin Neal makes some sense for as a pass catcher. I don't know if he would go this high. Let's just have some fun and give him Dylan Sampson. And yeah, I feel like that's a pretty decent fit. Another Tennessee running back for them. So now the Seahawks are back up on the clock. They get Tyler Booker, Brandon Swinson, and I'll try to keep up if there's anybody in the chat. If you have some input, please let me know what you would do. So the Seattle Seahawks at pick 52. So we've gone edge, we've gone guard. They could continue to bolster that, I suppose. But they have Cooper Kupp and they have they have Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I don't know if they really have like a third guy that can play outside because they need an outside receiver. Right now, that guy is going to be Marcus Valdez-Scantling. I would assume they want to put Sam Darnold in the best position possible. Now, tight end is also an option here. A lot of people think Mason Taylor could go in the first round. So I do think we look offense, and I think Mason Taylor's in play. I think Oh, Elikai Manor's in play. But I think we're going to give him Mason Taylor. I guess Trey Harris would be a nice fit for them. Actually, you know what? F it. We're giving him Trey Harris. Think about that. Trey Harris on the outside with, JSN, Cooper Cup, the two slot receivers. I like that quite a bit. And now we are at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selection. They took linebacker Jahad Campbell, and I think that they would be thrilled with either edge that's left here. Actually, three edges that they could take. I think that makes a lot of sense for them. Let me just double check. I guess corner. They could also look corner. Benjamin Morrison is sitting there, staring him right in the face. But I think Princely, if he's here, I think would be a guy that's been productive. Landon Jackson has the traits, but he just hasn't been as productive. And I'm grasping at straws here, and that's probably the wrong expression to use. But Princely, you, the Prince man, human melon. All right, so the Packers got a steal with Jahdae Barron, and they say one of their needs is wide receiver. I just don't buy it. They have a bunch of different wide receivers that can do different things. Like they have Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Dubs. I don't know if that's a need for them. I don't think PFF's being 100% honest with us. I think that they probably look to the trenches, and they probably, I mean, they're probably going to do what the Packers always do and just take best player available. I suppose that they could go offensive line. I don't think that they go skill position, as I said. Why don't we just give them Landon Jackson and move on? Landon Jackson to the Packers, so they have an edge in a corner. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time to do another thing that's going to be fun for fantasy football. Quinshon Judkins, come on down to the Los Angeles Chargers and sit behind, well, heck, I don't know if he would do much sitting behind Najee Harris, but he would be the heir apparent, the running back that Jim Harbaugh would just absolutely love. And so now we have the Buffalo Bills on the clock here. And, they could continue to bolster their defense. They already took a corner. Demetrius Knight is there. There's some nice edges that could make an impact to their roster. But I think that there's a really good defensive interior lineman available for them, and that's CJ West. So I'm going to take CJ West for them. So the Panthers, they filled their edge need with Mikael Williams in the top 10. And now I think wide receiver is an option for them, potentially. And if they want to fix, or if they want to replace Adam Thielen, I don't know if you could do much better than Jack Besh. And I think that would be a nice security blanket for Bryce Young. So there we go. The Houston Texans went Gray Zabel with their first pick, who's probably, I would assume, is going to play some guard for them. Now they could, the Texans, they're a pretty good football team. They could go best player available. They could look tight end. It might be a sneaky landing spot for a tight end. I know that Dalton Schultz is there. They could also just continue to bolster their offensive line and just protect CJ Stroud. And there's a lot of good options left on the board. This is a tough one. They could also go with a skill player, wide receiver. Because if you look at their depth chart, if you look at the Texans, let me just pull this up real quick. We know Tank Dell's going to be hurt. They signed Christian Kirk. Um, they could kind of use another outside receiver. That I think that would be the direction that they would go. So Alec Manor potentially could be an option for them, who's still at the top of the PFF board. But this kind of feels like a scenario where the Texans would just go best player available. So kind of looking at it from that perspective, Benjamin Morrison, I don't know if that's a huge need for them at cornerback. Defensive line is, TJ Sanders is sitting there. This is a tough pick. It really is. There's some edges, Josiah Stewart. I know there's some issues with, I think, his testing, if I'm thinking of the right guy. But, man, I think, I think we just give him TJ Sanders, who could be like a BPA sort of pick for them. And now the Ravens, quote the Raven nevermore. They go with Malachi Starks. I do think that the Ravens, again, this is just what the Ravens do. They just kind of sit and wait, and they are rewarded by Benjamin Morrison. So their secondary gets a huge upgrade with Malachi Starks and Benjamin Morrison. And now the Detroit Lions, I think that they have PTSD from like their defensive line not being deep enough. And so I think that they would go with an edge rusher here, JT Tuamola from Ohio State. And the Washington Commanders. Now, I don't know if a team would trade up for Tyler Shuck. He's still available. I don't know if they would need to be honest with you. I mean, the two teams, the Browns and the Giants, have filled their quarterback need. So I don't know if any team would do that. The Commanders are now on the clock. They could look running back, but they kind of missed out. I mean, Cam Scadabo's there, RJ Harvey, but I think we're mostly looking at round 3 guys. So I don't know if they would go in that direction. Offensive line could be a nice fit for them. And I think that I think I'm just gonna stop the skid. Let me just double check. Porter would be nice. Ursery would be nice pick for them. Azariah Thomas would be nice. I actually think Jalen Knoll might not be a bad fit for them either. Okay. Wow, just giving more weapons. The more I think about that, actually, the more I think about it, the more I like it. Jalen Knoll to the Washington Commanders. Man, I kind of like that. Let me know what you think of that in the comments. Now we're back with the Bills. The Bills have taken Trey Amos, CJ West. They still, I mean, the Bills could use another wide receiver. They could. They could also use an edge rusher or safety. And I do think best player available is Xavier Watts. So I think that they're going to take Xavier Watts. And the Chiefs, man, the Chiefs could use some more offensive line help. They take Connerly. They got to steal with him in round 2, or in round 1, rather. But there's a player still on the board that I mocked them in one of the first mocks that I did that I think has a sneaky potential to go in round 1. And that's Arante Ursery. So I think that they're just going to keep loading up on the offensive line to protect Patrick Mahomes and eventually have some replacements and some depth there where they didn't have much depth before. And so now that leaves the Eagles, who take James Pierce. And I think if Siobhan Ravel fell this far to them, this is just either that or Darian Porter, but I think Ravel is the better player. Uh, some injury concerns, but it just feels like, I mean, can you imagine the Eagles would get James Pierce and Siobhan Ravel? So that is round two. We're on to round three. And if you haven't clicked the like button, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? Just all it takes is a click. Thank you so much for watching. And the Giants, who have taken Abdul Carter, Shedeur Sanders, I think that they would be pretty happy with this. In the third round, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that they could go. And offensive line, there's some offensive linemen that they need. I suppose they could go wide receiver. I don't think that that's the direction that they go. I think offensive line makes some sense. And maybe they're looking, let me just see who would be available. So Ozzy Trapilo would be the top player on the board. Let's give him a guy that I think he could kick inside to guard, although he hasn't played any snaps at guard. Charles Grant is getting a lot of buzz, and I think would be a nice fit for them. There for the Giants. Now the Chiefs are on OTC. They've taken 2 tackles. Again, I don't know how realistic that is, but I think the Chiefs need to fix their offensive line, and those 2 players would really help. So the Chiefs probably not gonna go. I mean, they could go wide receiver. I think that they're probably looking defensive line, edge rusher potentially. Man, I think Kyle Kennard makes some sense for them here. Jack Sawyer makes some sense. Jordan Birch makes some sense. Man, let me just look. Birch would be really nice for them. In fact, let's do that. I like that. Jordan Birch to the Chiefs. They get some depth along their pass rush. Now the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns are on the clock. And I mean, is this where we start looking at running back for them? I mean, does Cam Scatamo make any sense? I don't know. What kind of running back would Kevin Stefanski like? Maybe he'd like an RJ Harvey type over, maybe a Cam Scatabo. I don't know. But Travis Hunter, Jalen Milroe, have been their picks so far. I do think that they could look offensive line too. In fact, the more I think about it, I think that's probably with what's on the board right now. Let's just give them Marcus Bowe from Purdue. And now the Raiders, who have taken their offensive tackle, probably their right tackle of the future, and a running back. So they're definitely not looking running back. I think Darian Porter would make a lot of sense, or Azariah Thomas as a corner. And I feel like that's probably the best player also on the board right now. So let's go Azariah Thomas just to shake it up. And now the Pats are back on the board. They gone Will Campbell, Donovan Ezaraku. And, they could be looking at wide receiver, and I'm just going to do it for them. Elikai Manor can play outside wide receiver for them. And now the Jaguars. I think we keep this run of skill players because I know that Liam Cohen didn't use the tight end until he had to with Cade Otton there. But I think Mason Taylor makes a lot of sense here for the Jaguars. So I'm going to go that direction. Competition for Brenton Strange. And now the weirdest team in the league, Mason Graham, Donovan Jackson have been their picks. And, this would be the time where I give my blessing to take a quarterback, and Tyler Shuck is going to be the pick. So let me know what you think in the comments. So the Bears now on the clock in the third round. They've gone Kelvin Banks, Trevion Henderson, Nick Scoreton. They're thrilled with what they have. They're pretty happy with that. And honestly, I don't know what the Bears would do. This is typically the time when my Bears would get arrogant and go, "Yeah, we filled all of our needs. So what? Let's take a punter." Like they do something stupid in years past. But Ben Johnson's there. They have a grown up in the building now. Not to say that Ryan Poles is not a grown up, but I think that they keep on plugging along. And there's a player on the board right now. If this happens, if this is the Bears draft, if it's Kelvin Banks, Trevion Henderson, Nick Scoreton, and Andrew Makuba, oh my God. That would be amazing. Let's please make that happen. I would, because the Bears need a safety because, Brisker is dealing with the concussion stuff, and you just never know. And so now the Jets are up on the clock. They could go in a lot of different directions here. They've gone offense. They've given Justin Fields some weapons. So now, and I don't know. I think that if Aaron Glenn had his way, he would take some ass kickers. And I just kind of looking here, and let me just double check to see, defensive line is a need. Tight end, they filled that, didn't they? They filled that need. Let me see what defensive tackles are available. Alfred Collins. Ooh, Alfred Collins. Let's pick another Texas guy with Alfred Collins. Come on down. And now the Panthers, who have taken a wide receiver, they've taken edge. Man, Porter's still on the board. I think that's got to be the pick. Darian Porter. So there we go. Now, the San Francisco 49ers have done their best Philadelphia Eagles impression with Jalen Walker, Tate Ratledge. And, I think that they probably are going to still look to the trenches. They could also look to the running back position. That might be interesting. We've reached that special place in time where I think that this would be a weapon for them. And we know that Kyle Shanahan can't say no to a running back in the third round. But Shul Tootin, let's just do it. Let's have some fun, shall we? That would be a nice landing spot in round 3. So now the Cowboys, who have made us very happy for fantasy football. Matthew Golden, Caleb Johnson. Is it time for the Cowboys to be responsible? The answer is probably not. The answer is probably not. They could use, honestly, they could use a tight end. Why don't we just complete the trifecta? Matthew Golden, Caleb Johnson, Elijah Arroyo. Although I'm not a big believer. Wait a second. Let's just make sure that there's not a better tight end on the board. Oh, there is. I wouldn't do it. I'd probably go Terrence Ferguson, but I'm just trying to put my Jerry Jones hat on, thinking cap. And I think he would just go nuts. Harold Fannin. And look at, again, this is probably not what's going to happen. But look at this. that it feels Cowboysy, the recent Cowboys, where Jerry Jones has just taken back the reins and he's like, I want all offense. So anyway, uh, now the Patriots are on the clock. Let me just go back and see what the Patriots have done. The Patriots have had a nice draft, I think. Will Campbell, Donovan Ezeraku, Alec Manor. They're another team that could go tight end. And just pulling up, just thinking through this. Yeah, they have Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper. I don't think that they go that direction because I think those are two veterans. I think that they would be fine with that. Um, yeah, I think you're just kind of taking a look at what they need. They could use. I mean, I suppose they could take a running back. I mean, Cam Scatabo is sitting there. Um, Royo Scatabo. I don't know. I just for some reason I don't feel like tight end is the way to go. Well, don't you think that Vrabel would be a Scatabo guy? I think Vrabel would be a Scatabo guy. Let's just make it happen. Vrabel's a Scatabo guy. Cam Scatabo, pick 77 to the Patriots. Like and subscribe. This is what you're here for. Arizona Cardinals, come on down. They have picked Will Johnson, Omar Norman Lott. When you take a look at what they could use, I guess they could use another wide receiver. Let's see. Let's see what wide receivers are left on the board. Kyle Williams is there. That's interesting. Jalen Royals could play the slot. Torrey Horton. Honestly, the only two wide receivers I'd probably consider would be Royals and Kyle Williams. Feels kind of rich for both, honestly. So maybe we look in a different direction. They've taken their corner. Maybe they look offensive line. Let's see. Oh, I think I have the perfect pick for them. Let me just filter by offensive line. Ozzy Trapilo, Jonah, Savania. That's probably horrible. Let's go with Jonah Savania from Arizona. They get an offensive lineman, and now the Texans are on the clock. They have Gray Zabel, TJ Sanders. I know a minute ago I said it was kind of rich for Jalen Royals, but either him or Kyle Williams. I think Kyle Williams, honestly, is just feels like NFL teams would much prefer him. And then just let me double check. So, okay. Yeah, let's go wide receiver. Let's go Kyle Williams here. I think that there's some real buzz surrounding him, and I think that this is a need for the Texans, and we would be really happy in fantasy football with that as well. The Colts, they filled their tight end need. They filled their linebacker need. These feel like Chris Ballard picks. I mean, I think I nailed the Colts. I really do. So that means that, they could be. I mean, who knows? Who knows what the Colts are going to do, really? I mean, I know I've predicted their draft pretty much perfectly up to this point. But, I mean, it's hard to get 3 rounds right. Let's see if we can do it. I mean, wide receiver would make some sense. I don't think that they would be into Jalen Royals, do you? Let's look at wide receiver. I mean, maybe not. Maybe Ballard would be a Restrepo guy. He would be. They could go edge rusher. In fact, that does make some sense. Now, I think they're into bigger edge guys. Let's go to the edge. Jared Ivy's first on the that actually would make a lot of sense. Femi Oladejo, Josiah Stewart, Kyle Kennard. I do like Kyle Kennard quite a bit. Jack Sawyer. I think Jack Sawyer's a Vrabel guy. It's either Jared Ivey or Jack Sawyer. Let's see. Uh, let's go. Let's just go Jack Sawyer. I know some people might not like him, but I feel like that's a Ballard guy right there. All right, so Bengals have shored up their defense with Shamar Stewart, Kevin Winston Jr. I don't think we overthink this. I think Demetrius Knight's on the board. He's the best linebacker left on the board. He's the best linebacker on PFF's board. Now their defense, I mean, they've gone defense, 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 and I think that's what they need. The Seahawks are back up. They've gone Tyler Booker, Braden Swinson, Trey Harris, and this might be a good tight end spot as well. This could be a good tight end spot. They could also use another offensive lineman, but in fact, I think we have to. I think we have to be responsible. They have another pick coming up, or another. Yeah, they do have another pick in the third round. So I think Jared Wilson makes a ton of sense for them. Fills a need. Now the Steelers. So they got Jackson Dart. They're back up here on the clock. And they're another team that could use a running back. They could also use some offensive line help. Man, what should we do for the Steelers? Let's go to running back. Let's see what's there. Oh, man. Let's just scroll here a little bit. Doesn't Damian Martinez just feel like a Pittsburgh Steeler? I know he played at Miami. Or Devin Neal. Ooh. Devin Neal. Let's F it. Let's just do it. This feels like a Steeler. Devin Neal. Pass catcher. True 3-down running back, if you ask me. That might be a hot take. All right. Princely, Human Yellen, and Jihad Campbell for the Bucks. They could look corner. Jacob Parrish would be the top guy on the board for them as of according to PFF. They could, they could also go offensive line. I wouldn't hate the offensive line. Them taking offensive line here. I like Wyatt Millum, Ozzy Trapilo. In fact, I think. Let's see. You know what? Let's go with my first gut instinct and go. I guess Dorian Strong's ahead of him, but Jacob Parrish for me would be a nice pick. And they keep on going with defense. So the Broncos go Tedro McMillan, Dylan Sampson. Interior defensive line feels like the biggest need for them. They filled wide receiver and running back. I guess they could also go corner. They signed Evan Ingram. So I mean, I suppose they could take a tight end. I mean, I guess we could do the offensive trifecta for them as well. That might be interesting. That would also be the most fun thing to do. But I guess at some point I have to be a responsible person. Shamar Turner would be a bigger defensive lineman. Let's give him a defensive lineman, Shamar Turner. And now that brings us to the Los Angeles Chargers. Kenneth Grant, Quinshon Judkins, all Big Ten squad. You know that Jim Harbaugh would love Quinshon Judkins. If he picked him, the Ohio State. There's another guy, a Michigan guy, Josiah Stewart on the board right now. Yeah. Man, what would Harbaugh do? Let's think about this. So they filled I mean, they could use a tight end. Which tight end would they like? They probably want somebody who could block. Let's take a peek here. I don't know if that's Arroyo. Not really sure if that's. Yeah, I'm not really sure if there's a tight end that they would just want here. Um, let's see. Let's just keep. I mean, would he just keep going with the All Michigan team? I don't know. Maybe he takes a steal here with Josiah Stewart. Let's just do that. That feels Harbaugh. Packers. They go Jedi Barron, Landon Jackson, um, corner and edge. So they fill those two needs. Wide receiver could make some sense. I wouldn't understand it. Um, so I don't know if that's the direction we go. I think offensive line, they could, Packers are just a classic best player available type of team. And so I think Ozzy Trapilo would make some sense. Kyle Kennard would make some sense. In fact, it would be like we just double check. No, they took an edge. Let's give them Ozzy Trapilo from Boston College. Now the Jags, who have gone the all offensive route with Genty, Burden, and Mason Taylor. The unhinged mock draft you're seeing. I told you it would be cockamamie at the start. Okay, so I'm following through on my promise. All right, you're welcome. Jaguars, I think now's the time where if you kind of look at what's on the board, there's some interior pass rushers, some edge rushers that would make some sense for them. Now that they've just completely gone on an offensive bender at the start of the draft, I think interior defensive line would make some sense. And the best one on let's look at the interior defensive tackles here. Jordan Phillips. Ooh, Jordan Phillips would be a nice pick. Let's look at edge. Jared Ivey. Let's go Jordan Phillips for them. I think that's a nice pick. All right, the Texans. They've addressed their offensive line. They've addressed the interior, the defensive line. They've taken a wide receiver. I genuinely think that they could be in the tight end market. I don't think that that's crazy to say. I think that they could just be best player available. They could take another offensive lineman. They could go in a lot of different ways. So let's give them another offensive lineman, shall we? And because we have to protect C.J. Stroud, Wyatt Mullum, come on down. The Rams, now that they didn't have a second round pick, but they went Maxwell Harrison, filled a corner need. I think that they would just be doing cartwheels to get a tight end here. So let's give them Terrence Ferguson. The Ravens are on the clock. They've done classic Ravens things. Malachi Starks, Benjamin Morrison, just taking the best players that have fallen to them that have also filled needs. But they could use some offensive line depth. So the best, I think, offensive lineman left on the board. Let me just sort it by offensive tackles, interior offensive linemen. Ooh, Fairchild. I think Fairchild. Let me just double check. Yeah, Fairchild. Oh yeah, that feels like a Ravens pick. The Seattle Seahawks are jumping over the stage onto the podium like box jump style to take Elijah Arroyo as a tight end. And now the New Orleans Saints, who have officially hit the reset button by drafting Tyler Shuck. Oh, man, Shuck just rhymes with something else. The chants are going to be brutal if he's bad in an opposing stadium. Just think about that for a second. So I don't know, man. The Saints are hard to figure out, but thinking about what we've done for them so far, we got a defensive tackle, offensive tackle, quarterback. I think corner would be a need here. So I think Dorian Strong would make some sense. Let me sort it by corners. Um, yeah, I think he's clearly the best one on the board right now. It's kind of a drop off after that. So I'm going to go Dorian Strong for them. All right. The Brownies are on the clock. Travis Hunter, Jalen Milroe, Marcus Bowe, all Cleveland Browns picks. They, I mean, again, they have a ton of needs. And just kind of thinking through what they would most likely do. I think that there's an edge staring them in the face that I think that they would take if he was available. And that would be one. And I also think that that's probably the, like probably what's best available. Jared Ivey would give them some depth there and some somebody to pair alongside um, Miles Garrett. The Chiefs have gone tackle, edge. And now it's interesting. I mean, the running backs, I don't know if there's a perfect fit for them. So I don't know if they go in that direction. I think Isaiah Pacheco is serviceable still. He was, he was dealing with an injury. Um, we could look into your defensive line. Um, I don't think that they'd take another offensive lineman. Let's do that. Let's look interior of the defensive line. Vernon Broughton would be yeah, I think this would make a ton of sense for them. Yeah. So let's keep on bolstering. Let me just look at Caldwell real quick. He's a little bit bigger. Yeah, I think Broughton would likely be a better fit for them. Um, just a few more picks to go. We have the Eagles, who James Pierce, Javon Ravel, they just keep on doing Eagles things, and I think that they would keep doing Eagles things and take Kyle Kennard. The Minnesota Vikings, they went Walter Nolan. They didn't have a second round pick. Um, I think that they would. I think that they would be in on running back. I don't know if they would love the options that are still there, but who knows? Um, I think that offensive line could be in play for them as well. Um, yeah, I think, man, Cameron Williams looks good. Let me look at interior or offensive tackles. We got corners. Yeah, corner. I think we've kind of missed the boat there. Um, okay. Let's go Cameron Williams for them. And now the Dolphins, who have taken Josh Simmons, Talik Williams. They're another team that could use a corner, but I don't know if there's I think that they would just wait at this point. So that leaves, I mean, they could go another offensive lineman. They could look to the interior of their offensive line. Miles Frazier, Seth McLaughlin, kind of feels Jake Majors, interesting center choice. Um, you know what? Let's give him Miles Frazier. Let's do that. And now the Bills, who've gone Trey Amos, CJ West, Xavier Watts. So defense, defense, defense. I think now might be the time where they pull the trigger on a wide receiver. Let's see what they got here. Jalen Broyles is the best on the board. I'm still not in love with these options, to be honest. I mean, I like Royals a little bit. I think that that could be interesting for them, but that would be like a serious upside swing. Um, let's take a look. Let's take a peek at linebacker. Let's take a peek there. I can't believe Jay Higgins is all the way down there. I'm not going to take him right here. Um, Danny Stutzman would be interesting. This is kind of just take whoever you. Let's just take a look here. Okay, so if we take a linebacker, it would be all defense. Not that that really matters, but I do think that their draft is going to be defensive focused. Um, let's just go ahead and take Stutzman for them. It feels like a Bills pick. Now the 49ers, Jalen Walker, Tate Radledge, Bashul Tootin. Feels like they could use another edge rusher or a defense. So let's give them. I think Femi Oladejo makes a lot of sense here. So let's do that. 2 more picks to go. If you haven't liked, if you haven't subscribed, do so now. Los Angeles Rams. So they go corner, tight end. I think that they could also be looking at the offensive line. Let's take a peek here. Don't love many of these options, to be honest. Let's look at edge defensive tackle. Again, we're kind of getting to that point in the draft where it's like just take your guy season. Corners we just looked at. It might be further down the list here, but let me just double check one thing. This is a tough spot for them, really is. Let's go offensive line. I don't want to reach too much. Tackle. Interior. Yeah, it might be Anthony Belton. Let's just take the best offensive lineman for them. And now the Detroit Lions, who have gone defensive line edge rusher. One more pick. Again, we're reaching the part of the draft where it's tough to kind of think through what they might do. I mean, they could go edge again. They also could go, provide some depth along the offensive line. Let me just I think that they really focus on the edge and a player this guy from Ahmad, I don't know if I can pronounce his name, Ahmad Hassanain from Boise State feels like a Detroit Lion, and we did it. 3 rounds. I think we only traded one time, but there technically was a trade. So there you go with Shedeur Sanders there. There's round 1. Let me just zoom out real quick, or not out, but in, or whatever I'm trying to say. Thank you for watching. I know I'm not the. I know that there's a million mock drafts out there, and honestly, I just wanted to do this for fun, to get something out into the ether that I could look back at and say, hey, look at how right I was here. Look at probably more accurately, how wrong was I? And I also wanted to do a live stream. I haven't live streamed in a long time, so I also wanted to do that. And anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, means a lot. Leave a comment. And until next time, happy NFL draft. Go watch Draft Day tonight, even though it's a terrible movie. And we will see you later. Bye-bye, everybody.